There is a kind of person who works endlessly, chases relentlessly, and still finds that success slips through their fingers, like sand. And then there is another kind of person, quieter, more deliberate, more rooted, who seems to draw good things toward them, without the frantic grasping. The world calls the second person lucky. The Stoics called them wise. What separates these two people is not talent. It is not timing. It is not even effort. It is something far older, far deeper, and far more precise. It is a set of internal principles, secrets hidden inside one of the greatest philosophical traditions the world has ever produced, that fundamentally change how a person relates to work, to desire, to failure, and to fortune. Today, we are going to go through 5 of those secrets, not surface-level advice, not motivational noise, real Stoic philosophy, drawn from the writings of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. Men who did not just theorize about excellence, but who lived it, under the most demanding conditions imaginable. What these men discovered about success is not what the modern world tells you. It is better. It is stranger. And if you are willing to sit with it, it will change how you operate at the most fundamental level. Stay with this until the very end. Every section builds on the one before it. Leave before the final secret and you will have missed the piece that makes everything else work. Welcome to Stoic Zeno. If this channel has given you something useful before, take a moment right now to like this video. It helps more people find this content. Share it with someone in your life who is chasing success the hard way. Drop a comment below telling me which Stoic principle has already influenced how you think. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. There is a great deal more on the way. Let us begin. Secret number 1. Stop chasing the goal. Start mastering the process. Who has ever wanted to succeed has made the same foundational error. They have fixed their eyes on the destination and treated the road as nothing more than an obstacle to be overcome. The result of this error is always the same: anxiety on the way there, emptiness when they arrive, and the restless, hollow feeling that sends them chasing the next target immediately after. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. He wrote in his Meditations that a person does not need many things to live well. What they need is discipline in the present action, not discipline in pursuit of a future reward. Discipline as the reward itself. This is a distinction most people never make. And it costs them everything. The Stoic approach to success begins with a radical reorientation of attention. Instead of asking what you want to achieve, the Stoics taught you to ask what kind of person you want to be in the act of working. The goal exists. You acknowledge it, you set it clearly. And then you release your emotional grip on it entirely, and you put that energy back into the quality of what you are doing right now. This is not indifference to results. It is something subtler and more powerful. It is the recognition that your only actual point of influence is the present action. The outcome lives in the future, which belongs to fate. The process lives right here, and that is where your entire self must be deployed. Epictetus made this the cornerstone of his teaching. He divided all of existence into 2 categories: things within our control, and things outside it. Within our control, our attention, our effort, our choices, our response to circumstances. Outside our control, outcomes, other people's opinions, timing, luck, the market, the weather, what happens after we send the work out into the world. The person who ties their well-being to outcomes is at the mercy of forces they cannot govern. They will feel good when things go well and devastated when they do not. And because the world is fundamentally unpredictable, they will spend most of their life in some state of anxious tension. The person who ties their well-being to the quality of their effort and the integrity of their process is untouchable. The results still matter, still inform, still teach. But they do not dictate emotional state or internal worth. Here is what makes this practically transformative. When you stop clinging to the outcome, you perform better. You think more clearly. You take more intelligent risks. You make decisions based on what is actually true, rather than what you desperately need to be true. You stop sabotaging your own work with fear and you stop diluting it with ego. The great paradox is this: the person who is obsessed with success tends to get in their own way. The person who is obsessed with the quality of their present effort tends to produce the kind of work that success follows naturally. This is not mysticism, it is mechanics. When your attention is fully on the process improves. When the process improves consistently over time, results follow, not always immediately, not always in the form you expected. But they follow. The Stoics understood that success is not something you hunt, it is something you cultivate. And cultivation requires patience, presence, and the willingness to find meaning in the work itself, before any reward arrives. Begin this practice today. Before you start any task, ask yourself one question. What does excellent look like in this single action, right now? Not excellent as in famous, not excellent as in financially rewarded. Excellent as in, if no one ever saw this, if no result ever came from it, would I still be able to say I gave it my full honest best? That question, asked consistently, changes the quality of everything you produce. And quality, compounded over time, is the bedrock of every lasting success. Accurate number 2. Use obstacles as raw material. There is a line in the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius that has survived 2,000 years, and still reads like something written yesterday. He wrote that the obstacle to action advances action. What stands in the way, becomes the way. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive idea in all of Stoic philosophy, and it is also one of the most empirically verifiable. Because when you study the lives of the most successful people across history, you find a consistent pattern. Not the absence of adversity, but a particular relationship with it. A relationship in which difficulty is not an interruption of progress. It is the mechanism of it. Marcus Aurelius understood this from experience, not theory. He ruled the Roman Empire during a period of plague, war, and constant political threat. He could not wait for conditions to improve before he led. He had to govern inside the storm, and in doing so, he became extraordinary precisely because of the demands placed upon him. The pressure did not break him. It forged him. The Stoics taught a practice they called amor fati, love of fate, not passive acceptance, not resignation, active love, the deliberate, practiced embrace of whatever circumstances present themselves, including, and especially the unwelcome ones, because those are the ones that develop the qualities you actually need. Think about this carefully. Every skill you currently have that is genuinely valuable was developed under some form of resistance. You did not become patient in easy conditions. You did not develop resilience in comfortable ones. You did not learn to think clearly under pressure, unless pressure found you first. Das ist, every competency that makes you formidable was forged in exactly the kind of situation you were hoping to avoid. The person who understands this shifts their response to difficulty at the most fundamental level. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What is this developing in me?" Instead of treating the obstacle as evidence that success is being withheld, they treat it as the training ground where the person capable of success is being built. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius that fire is the test of gold, and adversity is the test of a strong man. But more than a test, it is a forging. The fire does not merely reveal whether gold is real, it purifies it, removes the impurities, makes it more valuable than it was before it entered the flame. This reframing is not about toxic positivity. It is not about pretending difficulty does not hurt or that setbacks do not cost you real things. They do. The Stoics were not naive about suffering. What they insisted upon is that suffering and adversity contain something useful. And that the person who is willing to mine that usefulness consistently ends up ahead of the person who wastes their adversity on bitterness, blame, or the hope that someone will rescue them from it. Here is the practical instruction. The next time something goes wrong, and something will go wrong, resist the first response. Resist the impulse to immediately frame it as loss. Give yourself a moment, and then ask, what skill does navigating this develop? What information does this failure contain that success would have hidden from me? What quality does this difficulty require me to build? You will find, more often than not, that the obstacle is not blocking the path to who you need to become. It is the path. Epictetus number 3, desire less, receive more. This secret sounds like a contradiction. In a world built on the belief that wanting more produces more, the Stoic teaching on desire lands like a cold splash of water. But sit with it, because it is one of the most practically applicable insights the ancient world ever produced. Epictetus was a slave before he was a philosopher. He owned nothing. He had no political power, no wealth, no social standing, and he became one of the most psychologically free human beings in the historical record. A man whose students included emperors, senators, and generals who came to him not to share their power, but to understand why he seemed to have something they did not. What he had was this: a complete mastery of desire. The Stoics made a distinction that modern culture consistently blurs. They separated what they called natural and necessary desires from what they called empty desires. Natural and necessary desires are those whose satisfaction results in genuine well-being, nourishment, rest, meaningful connection, purposeful work, health. Empty desires are those whose satisfaction produces nothing real. Status, the accumulation of things beyond what is useful, the need for approval, the craving for recognition. The tragedy of the empty desire is not just that it is unfulfilling once satisfied. It is that it is actively costly while being pursued. The person chasing status cannot make decisions based on what is true. They must make decisions based on what looks good. The person craving approval cannot take necessary risks. They are too afraid of what failure will mean to others. The person obsessed with accumulation cannot think clearly about what actually matters. They are perpetually calculating and comparing. Empty desire does not just fail to produce success. It actively blocks it. Here is the mechanism. When you need something to happen in order to feel okay, you make worse decisions about it. When you are desperate for a particular outcome, you communicate that desperation. In negotiations, in creative work, in relationships, in every domain where the quality of your presence affects the quality of what you produce. Neediness repels the very things it is seeking. The Stoic solution is not to kill desire entirely. That is not human, and the Stoics never proposed it. The solution is to redirect desire toward things that are actually within your control, and toward things whose satisfaction produces genuine, rather than illusory good. Desire excellence in your craft. Desire integrity in your choices. Desire growth in your understanding. These are desires that sharpen you, rather than deplete you, that make you more capable, rather than more anxious. Marcus Aurelius practiced this through a discipline of simplification, both material and mental. He deliberately stripped away preferences and luxuries, not because he was punishing himself, but because he understood that each unnecessary preference is a hostage given to fortune. The more you need, the more leverage the world has over you. The less you need, the freer you are to act from genuine judgment rather than fear of loss. Practically, audit your desires. Not just material ones, emotional ones. Identify where you are operating from craving rather than from genuine direction. Where are you making decisions based on what you need to be true rather than what actually is? Where are you performing success rather than building it? Wherever you find empty desire driving your choices, you have found a leak in your capacity. Closing that leak does not make you passive. It makes you powerful in a way that grasping never does. Accurate number 4. Build your character before you build your empire. Marcus Aurelius spent years building the internal architecture of his character through the private pages of his meditations before and while he governed the most powerful empire on earth. He never published those pages. He wrote them for himself, as a daily exercise in self-examination, self-correction, and the relentless questioning of his own motives and assumptions. This is the fourth secret, and it is the one that the productivity culture of the modern world most consistently misses. The outer architecture of success can only be as strong as the inner architecture of the person building it. The Stoics taught that virtue, which they understood as the disciplined alignment of your actions with your values, is the only genuine good, not because material success does not matter, but because material success built on a character that cannot sustain it will always collapse. History is littered with the wreckage of talented, ambitious people who built extraordinary things on the foundation of an unexamined, undisciplined inner life. The structure eventually reflects the foundation. What does it mean practically to build character? The Stoics gave very specific answers. It means developing the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Wisdom is the ability to see clearly, to distinguish what is actually true from what you want to be true, to make good judgments. Justice is the commitment to treating others fairly, to contributing something real to the world, rather than extracting from it. Courage is the willingness to act rightly even when it is costly. Temperance is the mastery of impulse, the ability to choose the difficult right thing over the easy pleasant thing. These are not soft virtues. They are the hardest skills a human being can develop. And they are also the skills that make every other area of a person's life function better. Consider wisdom in the context of decision-making. The person who has genuinely cultivated the ability to see clearly, to separate signal from noise, to resist motivated reasoning, to acknowledge what they do not know, makes fundamentally better decisions than the person who is smart, but driven by unchecked ego or fear. Every additional clarity of perception translates directly into better outcomes. Consider courage in the context of creative or professional work. The person who has genuinely cultivated the willingness to act despite fear, to take the right position, even when it is unpopular, to make the difficult decision without flinching, to be honest with themselves about what is not working, operates at a different level than the person who is always hedging, always managing perception, always taking the safe path. Consider temperance in the context of long-term building. The person who has mastered impulse, who can delay gratification, maintain consistent effort across seasons when there is no immediate reward, resist the distraction of short-term opportunities that undermine long-term goals, compounds their advantage in ways that those without this discipline simply cannot match. Character, in the Stoic framework, is not a moral luxury, it is a strategic asset. And unlike most assets, it cannot be taken from you, it does not depreciate, and it becomes more valuable over time rather than less. The daily practice that builds this is reflection. Marcus Aurelius did it in writing. Epictetus taught it through dialogue. Seneca did it through the letters he wrote to others and to himself. The common thread is the daily habit of honest self-examination, not self-punishment, not rumination. The clear-eyed question, where did I act in alignment with my values today, and where did I not? What did I do well, and what do I need to correct? This practice, maintained consistently, builds a form of self-knowledge that becomes one of the most valuable things a person can possess. You begin to know where your weaknesses are before they become failures. You begin to catch your own self-deceptions before they become bad decisions. You begin to act from genuine values rather than from reactive impulse. And that shift alone changes the quality of everything you produce. Accurate. Number 5. Act as if fortune cannot touch you. Because it cannot touch what matters most. This is the culminating secret. The one that makes the others sustainable, and it is the one that requires the most from you. Not in terms of effort, but in terms of philosophical courage. The Stoics believed in something they called the inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius returned to this image again and again in his meditations. The idea is this: within every person, there is a core, the rational, choosing self, that is genuinely invulnerable to external circumstance. Fortune can take your health, your wealth, your reputation, your relationships. It cannot take your capacity to choose how you respond. It cannot touch your values, your judgment, your character, the quality of your inner life. These belong to you absolutely, and no force on earth can strip them without your permission. This is not a comfort for the passive. It is a foundation for the active, because when a person genuinely internalizes this, not just intellectually, but in their bones, in their operating assumptions, they become capable of a form of boldness that anxious people never can access. Most people hold back, not because they lack ability, not because the opportunity is not there, but because they are afraid of failure, of loss, of what it would mean about them if they tried and did not succeed. They protect themselves by not fully committing, by keeping one foot outside the arena, by always having a reason why the conditions were not right. The Stoic who has genuinely accepted the impermanence of externals does not operate this way. They understand that the worst-case scenario, losing the external thing they were pursuing, does not touch the thing that actually matters. And so they commit fully. They act with their whole self. They bring everything they have to present endeavor, because they are not spending half their energy protecting themselves from an outcome they are afraid of. This is what Seneca meant when he wrote that a person who does not know what port they are sailing for is not helped by any wind, but the person who knows, not just what they want to reach, but who they are and what they stand for, can navigate any conditions. they are not dependent on the wind being favorable. They know how to sail. The practice here is what the Stoics called negative visualization. The deliberate, regular contemplation of loss, not as a morbid exercise, as a clarifying one. Seneca encouraged his readers to imagine losing everything they currently have, the position, the income, the relationship, the health, not to dwell there, but to sit long enough in that imagined space to answer the question, and then what? If the answer to that question is that you would be destroyed, that you would have nothing left of value, that you do not know who you would be without these externals, then those externals have power over you that they should not have, and the way to take that power back is not to acquire more externals to feel more secure. It is to build more depth in the inner citadel. When you have sat with the contemplation of loss long enough, something clarifying happens. You begin to see what is actually essential and what is merely preferred. You begin to hold your achievements and possessions more lightly, not carelessly, but with the kind of mature appreciation that recognizes they are gifts, not guarantees, and that very lightness, paradoxically, makes you more effective in pursuing them, because you are not grasping, you are not desperate, you are operating from abundance rather than fear. And people, situations, and opportunities respond to that energy differently than they respond to need. Acts as though fortune cannot break you, because at the deepest level it cannot. Build your inner citadel with every decision, every moment of discipline, every act of honest self-examination. Let that be the ground you stand on, and from that ground, move into the world with the full force of who you have built yourself to be. Without apology, without reservation, and without the paralysis that comes from needing any particular outcome in order to feel whole. That is the Stoic path to success. Not the loudest path, not the fastest, but the most durable, the most honest, and ultimately the most effective. These 5 secrets are not independent of one another. They form a single coherent system. Mastering the process over fixating on outcomes is only possible when you have reduced the grip of empty desire. Transforming obstacles into raw material requires the inner citadel, the unshakable core that cannot be broken by temporary setbacks. Character building is the infrastructure on which all of it rests. And the ability to act without fear of fortune is the engine that gives everything else its power. The Stoics did not write these things as theory, they wrote them as instructions for living. Instructions they tested against the most difficult conditions of their own lives. Marcus Aurelius governed through plague and war. Epictetus flourished while enslaved. Seneca faced exile, ruin, and eventually execution, with the same equanimity he had preached for decades. These were not comfortable men, writing comfortable philosophy. They were human beings who had tested these ideas under pressure, and found them to hold. The question is not whether the philosophy works. It does. The question is whether you are willing to apply it. Not just read it, not just find it interesting, but actually restructure your internal operating system around these principles and begin living from them today. That is what this channel is about, not passive inspiration. Active transformation. The kind that begins in the mind, moves through the character, and eventually reshapes everything you touch in the external world. If something in this video struck you, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Tell me which of these 5 secrets challenges you the most, or which one you have already begun to apply and what it has done for your life. Your reflection might be exactly what another person in this community needs to read today. If this video gave you something real, take 30 seconds right now to like it, share it with someone who is serious about building themselves, not just their bank account, and subscribe to Stoic Zeno if you have not already. Every video on this channel is built on the same foundation: real philosophy, real application, and the honest work of becoming someone worthy of the life you want to build. This is not the end of the conversation. It is the beginning of one that, if you stay with it, will change the way you see everything. The Stoics are waiting. The question is whether you are ready to listen.